The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slammed shut as emergency alarms blared through the crystalline halls. Delegates from across the galaxy rushed to their seats, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and electronic sounds. Something terrible had happened. Ambassador Park Jin-woo walked slowly down the central aisle, his black diplomatic uniform pristine despite the chaos around him. His face showed no emotion, but those who knew humans could see the dangerous stillness in his dark eyes. In his hand, he carried a small data pad that contained news that would change everything. The Vorthak representative, a massive creature, with 6 arms and armor-like skin, was already at the central podium bragging to other delegates. The human colonies were so easy to destroy. It clicked through its translator. Their defenses were pathetic. 3 worlds turned to ash in mere hours. Park Jin-woo stopped walking. Around him, other delegates fell silent as they realized what the Vorthak had just admitted to. The human colonies in the Kepler system were gone. Millions of innocent people were dead. "Did you just confess to breaking the Galactic Peace Accords?" Park asked, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber despite speaking barely above a whisper. The Vorthak turned its massive head toward him, mandibles clicking in what passed for laughter among its species. "What will the humans do? Cry to the Council? Send your tiny fleet of research vessels to fight us?" Park Jin-woo placed his datapad on a nearby table and walked to the center of the chamber. Every delegate watched him, sensing that something important was about to happen. The chamber's recording systems automatically focused on him as he began to speak. "For 200 years we followed the peace accords," he said, his voice growing stronger with each word. "We kept our fleet small, we limited our weapons, we expanded slowly and carefully. We were happy to be the quiet neighbors in this galaxy, the D." Altarian delegate, a being made of living crystal, chimed softly. "Ambassador Park, surely we can negotiate." "No." The single word cut through the chamber like a blade. "There will be no negotiations, no treaties, no discussions." Park turned to face the Vorthak directly. "You made a choice when you murdered innocent families on those colonies. Now you will live with the consequences of that choice." The Vorthak representative laughed again, a sound like grinding metal. "You threaten us? With what army? Your merchant ships? Your research stations? The entire galaxy knows humans are weak." Park Jin-woo smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. It was not a pleasant smile. "That's where you're wrong. The galaxy knows what we wanted them to know." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small crystalline device no bigger than his thumb. Every delegate in the chamber stared at it, sensing its importance without understanding why. "This device will send a signal across all human space," Park explained, holding it up for everyone to see. "It will activate protocols that have been sleeping for 2 centuries. You see, when humans first reached the stars, we had a choice to make. We could be conquerors, or we could be neighbors. We chose to be neighbors." The Vorthak shifted uncomfortably, its 6 arms moving in what humans had learned was a sign of nervousness among its species. "But choosing to be peaceful doesn't mean we forgot how to be dangerous," Park continued. "We just hid that danger so well that even we almost forgot it existed. Almost." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes or optical sensors of every delegate present. Every human child learns about the old wars on Earth. They learn about the weapons we built, the tactics we developed, the things we did to each other before we learned to be better. When we reached the stars, we brought all of that knowledge with us. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the translation systems had stopped their constant humming. We signed the peace accords not because we were weak, but because we were strong enough to choose peace. We built merchant ships that could destroy fleets. We created research stations that could level continents. We trained farmers who could outfight your best soldiers. And then we hid it all behind smiles and trade agreements. Park Jin-woo's thumb hovered over the activation button on the device. The Vorthak Empire wanted to see what humans are capable of when pushed too far. Today you get your wish. He pressed the button. Across human space, on worlds that had known peace for generations, ancient systems came online. Hidden weapons powered up, Disguised warships shed their civilian masks. Millions of humans who had lived quiet lives as colonists, traders, and researchers remembered training they had hoped never to use. The sleeping giant was awake, and it was angry. Park Jin-woo pocketed the device and turned to leave the chamber. As he reached the doors, he spoke one final time without looking back. The Terran Accords are suspended. You broke the peace. Now the humans are coming. The doors closed behind him with a sound like thunder, leaving the galaxy to face a truth they had forgotten. The most dangerous predator is one that chooses not to hunt. Admiral Kim So-ra had been tending her small garden on Luna Colony when the emergency signal reached her personal communicator. The device had been silent for 20 years, collecting dust in her kitchen drawer. Now it buzzed with an urgency that made her hands shake as she answered it. Admiral Kim, this is Command. Operation Quiet Thunder is active. Report to Luna Base immediately. She stared at the device for a long moment. Luna Base was supposed to be a myth, a story told to scare enemy spies. According to all official records, it had been decommissioned decades ago. Kim had helped spread that lie herself. 30 minutes later, she stood before a hidden entrance built into the side of an old mining tunnel. Her handprint still worked on the scanner. The massive doors slid open with barely a whisper, revealing corridors that hummed with quiet activity. Commander. Lee Jun-ho was waiting for her in the main briefing room, looking exactly as he had 20 years ago except for the gray in his hair. Behind him, dozens of officers worked at computer stations that officially didn't exist. Status report, Kim said, slipping back into her old role as easily as putting on comfortable clothes. All ghost fleets are responding to the activation. Signal, Lee replied, bringing up a holographic display of human space. The merchant marine is dropping their civilian disguises. Defense platforms are coming online. We'll be at full operational capacity within 18 hours. Kim studied the display with growing satisfaction. Red dots marked the positions of human ships throughout the galaxy. There were thousands of them, far more than any alien species suspected existed. What about personnel? She asked. Captain Han Min-ji looked up from her station. Better than expected, Admiral. It seems most of our people kept up with their training during the peace years. The activation signal included memory triggers for all combat protocols. Kim nodded. Every human in space service had undergone special conditioning during training. While they lived normal, peaceful lives, part of their minds always remembered what they truly were. Warriors pretending to be merchants, farmers, and scientists. Show me the Vorthak fleet positions, Kim ordered. The display shifted to show enemy ships massing near the border of human space. The Vorthak had clearly expected their surprise attack to cripple human defenses. Their formation showed they were preparing for an easy conquest. They're confident, Lee observed. Look at their spacing. They're not even trying to protect their flanks. Why would they? Kim replied. According to their intelligence, we have maybe 50 warships total. They probably think this will be over in a week. She walked to the large viewing window that looked out over Luna's dark surface. In the distance, she could see shapes moving against the stars. Ships that had pretended to be cargo haulers for decades were now revealing their true nature. Weapon systems unfolded from hidden compartments. Armor plating slid into place over vulnerable areas. The transformation was beautiful and terrifying. Admiral, Han Min-ji called out. We're receiving reports from across human space. The awakening is proceeding ahead of schedule. Kim turned back to the display. New dots were appearing constantly as hidden facilities powered up and revealed themselves. Asteroid mining stations that were actually fortress factories. Research outposts that were really advanced military bases. Even civilian transports that carried enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. How long has it been since the Kepler attack? Kim asked. 6 hours, Lee replied. And they think they've won already. Kim's smile was cold. Patch me through to the Kepler battle group. The communication screen flickered to life, showing Captain Park Hyun-woo aboard the TDS Silent Thunder. His ship looked like an ordinary freight hauler from the outside, but Kim knew it carried enough weapons to flatten a continent. Admiral Kim, he said with a salute. All ships in the battle group are ready for combat operations. Excellent. Begin Phase 1 of the Kepler Protocol. Show them what happens when you murder human civilians. Understood, Admiral. We'll make them regret breaking the peace. Kim turned to address the entire command center. Officers at dozens of stations looked up from their work, waiting for her orders. For 2 centuries, we've pretended to be something. We're not, she began. We've played the role of peaceful neighbors while hiding our true strength. We did this because we believed peace was worth the deception. She paused, looking at faces that had grown older during the long peace but still remembered their duty. The Vorthak Empire has chosen to remind us why we became so good at hiding our capabilities. They've shown the galaxy what happens when someone mistakes human kindness for human weakness. The room was completely silent except for the quiet hum of computers and life support systems. Today we stop pretending. Today we show the galaxy who we really are, not conquerors or tyrants, but protectors. We will defend the innocent and punish those who prey on the weak. We will be what we were always meant to be. Kim looked out the window again at the ships preparing for war. Each one represented years of careful planning and hidden preparation. The galaxy thought humans were weak because humans had chosen to appear weak. Signal all commands, she ordered. Operation Quiet Thunder is now active. The sleeping giant is awake. Across human space, the transformation continued. A civilization that had spent 2 centuries perfecting the art of appearing harmless was finally showing its teeth. The Vorthak had wanted to see what humans were capable of. They were about to find out. Fleet Commander Krixtal of the Vorthak First Armada felt confident as his massive warships approached the Kepler system. His scouts had reported no significant human military presence in the area. The 3 colonies they had destroyed were completely defenseless, and intelligence suggested the remaining human outposts would be equally easy targets. Sir, we're detecting several vessels in the system, his tactical officer reported from across the bridge. They appeared to be civilian cargo ships and research vessels. Krixtal clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. Perfect. We'll destroy them quickly and move on to the next system. The humans will surrender within days once they see how hopeless resistance is. But as his fleet moved deeper into the system, something felt wrong. The human ships weren't running away. Instead, they seemed to be positioning themselves in a defensive formation that made no tactical sense for civilian vessels. Commander, the human ships are broadcasting a message, his communications officer announced. Put it through, Krixtal ordered, expecting to hear pleas for mercy. Instead, a calm human voice filled the bridge. Vorthak Fleet, this is Admiral Kim Sora of the Terran Defense Force. You have entered human space with hostile intent after committing acts of war against innocent civilians. You have one chance to surrender. Krixtal laughed, a sound like grinding metal that echoed through the bridge. Surrender? To cargo ships? Begin the attack, destroy them all. His fleet opened, fire with weapons that had conquered dozens of worlds. Massive energy beams lanced out toward the human vessels, strikes that should have vaporized the lightly armored civilian ships instantly. The beams passed right through them. What? Krixtal stared at his tactical display in confusion. Report. What happened to our weapons fire? Sir, the energy readings are impossible, his tactical officer stammered. The human ships appear to be phasing in and out of normal space. Our weapons can't lock onto them. Suddenly, the space around Krixtal's fleet filled with new contacts. Ships appeared from nowhere, materializing from what had seemed like empty space. These weren't the civilian vessels he had been tracking. These were warships, sleek and deadly, with weapon signatures unlike anything in the Vorthak military database. All ships, evasive maneuvers, Krixtal shouted, but it was too late. The human attack came from every direction at once. Weapons that ignored shields punched through Vorthak armor like it was made of paper. Energy beams that seemed to bend space itself carved through the enemy formation with surgical precision. Most terrifying of all, some human weapons turned the Vorthak's own power systems against them, causing their ships to tear themselves apart from within. Captain Park Hyun-woo watched the battle from the bridge of the TDS Silent Thunder as his ship's disguise finally fell away completely. The cargo containers that had hidden his weapons for 20 years split open like flower petals, revealing gun batteries that had been designed specifically to fight enemies like the Vorthak. "Target their command ship," he ordered his weapons. "Officer, let's end this quickly." The Silent Thunder's main cannon charged with a sound like thunder. When it fired, the beam didn't just punch through the Vorthak flagship's shields. It turned them into a weapon against the ship itself, creating a feedback loop that tore the massive vessel apart from the inside. Krixtal felt his ship shaking around him as systems failed throughout the vessel. Emergency lights flashed red as his crew tried desperately to understand what was happening to them. "Sir, we're losing structural integrity," his engineering officer reported. "Our own shields are somehow working against us. I don't understand how this is possible." "All ships retreat," Krixtal ordered, but most of his fleet was already burning. Wreckage drifting through space. Admiral Kim observed the battle from her command post on Luna Base, watching as her forces systematically dismantled the Vorthak armada. The engagement had lasted exactly 17 minutes, and it wasn't really a battle. It was a demonstration. "Admiral, the surviving Vorthak ships are attempting to flee," Commander Lee reported. "Let them go," Kim replied. "But make sure they carry a message back to their leadership." She opened a communication channel that would broadcast across the entire galaxy, not just to the fleeing Vorthak ships. "This is Admiral Kim Sora of the Terran Defense Force," she began, her voice calm and professional. "The Kepler colonies have been avenged. The Vorthak First Armada has been destroyed. Any species that chooses to stand with the Vorthak Empire will share their fate." She paused, looking directly into the camera that would carry her image to billions of beings across known space. "For 2 centuries, humans have been your peaceful neighbors. We chose that path because we believed cooperation was better than conquest. The Vorthak have reminded us why we were so careful to appear harmless." The communication cut to tactical footage of the battle, showing Vorthak ships being destroyed by weapons that seemed to defy the laws of physics. "Let this serve as a warning to any who would prey upon the innocent," Kim continued. "Humanity remembers how to wage war. We simply chose not to. That choice has now been revoked." Across the galaxy, alien leaders watched the footage in stunned silence. The humans had not just fought back, they had won with a precision and lethality that no species had ever demonstrated before. The message was clear: the sleeping giant was not just awake, it was hunting. The news of the Kepler reckoning spread through galactic communication networks faster than anyone thought possible. Within hours, every major species in the galaxy had seen the footage of the Vorthak First Armada being destroyed in 17 minutes. The images were shocking, but what terrified alien leaders more was how easily the humans had done it. In the crystal spires of the Altarian homeworld, High Counselor Velnari gathered her advisors in an emergency session. The Altarians had remained neutral in galactic conflicts for over 1,000 years, but this situation was different. "Show me the tactical analysis again," she requested, her crystalline form pulsing with nervous energy. The holographic display, filled with data from the battle, numbers that made no sense, human ships that appeared and disappeared at will, weapons that turned enemy defenses into weapons against themselves. Most disturbing of all, casualty reports that showed 0 human losses. "How is this possible?" asked General Tixon, the Altarian military commander. "Our intelligence files show humans have fewer than 100 warships total." "Apparently our intelligence was wrong," Velnari replied grimly. "The question now is, what do we do about it?" Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. The hegemony of Keth called emergency war councils. The Spiral Alliance activated their defense fleets. Even the ancient Mindari, who had not spoken to other species in centuries, began monitoring human space with growing concern. Meanwhile, the Vorthak Empire was experiencing something they had never known before: fear. Supreme Commander Vexthor stood in the command center of their fortress world, watching as reports flooded in from across Vorthak space. Human fleets were appearing everywhere, seemingly from empty space itself. Their outer colonies were being surrounded by forces that shouldn't exist. "How many ships are we facing?" he demanded from his intelligence chief. "That's impossible to determine, Supreme Commander," the officer replied nervously. Our sensors detect different numbers every time we scan, sometimes 50 ships, sometimes 500. The humans appear to have technology that makes accurate counting impossible. Vexthor's 6 arms moved in agitation. The Vorthak Empire had conquered dozens of species over the centuries. They had never encountered an enemy they couldn't understand, couldn't predict, couldn't defeat through superior numbers and firepower. What about our allies? Surely the other species will help us against this human threat? The intelligence officer hesitated. Actually, sir, we're receiving reports that several of our client species are beginning to negotiate separate peace agreements with the humans. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Park Jin-woo stood once again before the assembled delegates. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of chaos and confusion, there was silence and fear. The Terran Defense Force has completed Phase 1 of our response, Park announced calmly. Vorthak military assets in 17 systems have been neutralized. Their outer defensive perimeter no longer exists. The Draknari representative, a reptilian being with golden scales, spoke up nervously. Ambassador Park, surely terms can be negotiated. The Council could mediate. No. Park's single word cut through the chamber like a blade. The time for mediation ended when the Vorthak chose to murder innocent families. We gave the galaxy 2 centuries of proof that humans could be trusted neighbors. That trust has been broken. Gestured to the main display, which showed a tactical map of Vorthak space. Red markers indicated human fleet positions surrounding key worlds. The Vorthak homeworld is now under siege. We offer them one final opportunity to surrender unconditionally. If they refuse, the galaxy will see what human warfare looks like when we stop holding back. The Centaurian delegate, a being made of living energy, flickered with distress. But Ambassador, the Vorthak have families, civilians. So did the colonies they destroyed, Park replied coldly. The difference is that when we take Vorthak worlds, we will distinguish between soldiers and civilians. We will follow the laws of war that they chose to ignore. Deep in Vorthak space, the siege of their homeworld had begun. Admiral Kim commanded the operation from her flagship, surrounded by vessels that had revealed themselves to be among the most advanced warships in the galaxy. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Vorthak planetary government, Captain Hanminji reported. Put it through, Kim ordered. The view screen filled with the image of Supreme Commander Vexthor, his proud demeanor replaced by obvious desperation. Admiral Kim, I request terms for negotiation. Surely we can reach some agreement. You have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally, Kim interrupted. After that, we demonstrate why humanity was content to remain in the shadows for 2 centuries. Choose wisely. She cut the transmission and turned to her tactical officer. Status of our siege deployment? All human fleets are in position, Admiral. The Vorthak homeworld is completely surrounded. Their orbital defenses are offline, their fleet is scattered, and their communication networks are under our control. Kim nodded with satisfaction. The Vorthak had wanted to test human resolve. Now they were learning what it meant to face an enemy that had spent 2 centuries perfecting the art of war while pretending to be peaceful traders and farmers. Across the galaxy, other species watched and learned. The humans weren't conquerors seeking to build an empire. They were protectors who had been pushed too far. But that somehow made them even more terrifying. The sleeping giant was fully awake now, and the galaxy would never be the same. Supreme, Commander Vexthor stared at the tactical display showing human ships surrounding his homeworld. 23 hours had passed since Admiral Kim's ultimatum. His military advisors had spent those hours running every possible scenario through their computers, and each one ended the same way. Total defeat. Sir, we must make a decision, his chief of staff urged. The human deadline expires in 1 hour. Vexthor's 6 arms trembled with rage and frustration. The Vorthak Empire had never surrendered to anyone. For centuries, they had been the ones giving ultimatums, watching other species bow before their superior firepower. Now they faced an enemy that made their most powerful weapons look like toys. How many of our ships remain? He asked quietly. Less than 30% of our total fleet, sir. The humans have destroyed or disabled the rest without losing a single vessel. Vexthor closed his eyes. His people were warriors, but they were not fools. Continuing this fight would only lead to the complete destruction of his species. Open a channel to the human admiral, he commanded. Minutes later, Admiral Kim Sora's face appeared on the view screen. Her expression was calm but firm, showing no emotion as she waited for the Vorthak leader to speak. Admiral Kim, Vexthor began, his voice heavy with defeat. The Vorthak Empire surrenders unconditionally. Kim nodded once. Wise choice, Supreme Commander. You have saved your people from unnecessary destruction. The surrender was broadcast across the galaxy within minutes. Species that had feared Vorthak aggression for generations watched in amazement as the mighty empire laid down its weapons before human forces. But what happened next surprised everyone even more. Instead of occupying Vorthak worlds or enslaving their people, the humans did something unprecedented. They established what they called restoration zones, where Vorthak civilians could live safely while their leaders faced justice for war crimes. Admiral Kim stood in the former Vorthak Command Center, now serving as the headquarters for human peacekeeping forces. Captain Park Hyunwoo approached with the daily reports. Admiral, the War Crimes Tribunal has completed its work, he reported. The Vorthak military leadership will face justice, but their civilians are under our protection. Kim nodded approvingly. What about the other species that supported Vorthak? Aggression? Most have already requested peace negotiations. The Draknari Empire has offered to pay reparations for their support of the attacks. The hegemony of Keth is asking to join our new protection agreement. Kim smiled for the first time in weeks. This was exactly what humanity had hoped for when they began their careful deception centuries ago. Not conquest, but the chance to create a better galaxy. 6 months later, Ambassador Park Jin-woo stood once again before the Galactic Council. But this time, the chamber had been rebuilt and expanded. New species had joined, including former Vorthak colonies that had declared independence and requested human protection. The Terran Protectorate is now operational, Park announced to the assembled delegates. Any species facing aggression from others may request our protection. In return, they agree to follow basic principles of peace and justice. The Altarian representative, High Counselor Velnari, spoke up. Ambassador Park, what assurance do we have that humans will not become the new galactic overlords? Park's expression remained calm. Because we never wanted to rule anyone. For 2 centuries, we proved that humans could be trusted with power. By choosing not to use it, we revealed our true strength only when forced to protect innocent lives. He gestured to the viewing screen showing human fleets patrolling trade routes throughout the galaxy. Our ships are visible now, no longer hidden. They serve as a reminder and a promise. A reminder that breaking the peace has consequences, and a promise that those who seek to live in peace will be protected. The reformed Galactic Council voted unanimously to accept the new arrangement. Even former enemies recognized that human protection was better than the chaos that had existed before. On Luna Base, Admiral Kim watched the vote with satisfaction. Commander Lee approached with a final report. Admiral, all human fleets are now operating openly. The Ghost Fleet protocols have been permanently deactivated. We're no longer pretending to be merchants and farmers. Kim nodded. Good. The galaxy needed to see who we really are. Hiding our strength only worked as long as others chose to respect the peace. She looked out at the stars, thinking about the long journey that had brought them to this point. We never wanted to be galactic police, Junho. We just wanted to be left alone to explore and grow. But someone had to take responsibility, Lee replied. Better us than species that would abuse that power. Kim smiled. True. And perhaps this is what we were meant to become. Not conquerors or rulers, but guardians. Protectors of those who cannot protect themselves. The final broadcast went out across the galaxy that evening. Ambassador Park's voice carried to billions of beings on thousands of worlds. The galaxy is vast enough for all of us to thrive in peace, he said. We offer our protection not as masters, but as neighbors who remember what it means to be vulnerable. Remember this day when you consider your choices. We are still here. We are still watching. And we are still human. The sleeping giant had awakened, not to conquer, but to ensure that peace would never again be broken by those who mistake kindness for weakness.